Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome, because I've got a pretty large ego and I'm pretty in love with applause, really, and bright lights. So if there are any more lights and you applaud, I could be here all night. In fact, I'm so in love with bright lights that when I go into the bathroom in the morning, I do 20 minutes to the shower curtain. I played with Jay Connolly, well known in this parish, and I said, why in the name of Jesus are we playing in this? And he said, I just want to prove to all my Republican friends that global warming exists.
Pick a number.
We've got some great talent here, and as you can imagine, I am keenly aware of a deep sense of honor and privilege that you all must be feeling at having me here tonight. You've been playing golf and you've been having a few pints, so you've probably missed the latest news from Wall Street. The dollar has reached parity with the Monopoly £5 note. In local news, a lorry load of Viagra has been hijacked outside Waterville. The Gardaí are looking for a gang of hardened criminals. There are some additional prizes I understand will be presented tomorrow night. The outstanding pair, in fact, are not a good friends from Olympia, but I gather the Isaacsons, an Eskimo pair, are coming with a late run. And Liam Higgins' hole-in-one on the 16th has been equalled by a Native American pair using a canoe. Finally, in news, as we came to the 12th, which you people much more experienced of Waterville than me will know, it's the Mass hole, where Mass, then forbidden under the penal laws, was said in secret. I have more news, and this is new to Jay Connolly, but on the 4th, in fact, we have now historical information guaranteed that Druid priests conducted ancient ritual sacrifice 800 years ago on the fairways of the Forth. In fact, what they did was they ritually sacrificed young virgins. Apparently this practice fell into disrepute because of a shortage of Druid priests. For those of you native and foreign, you are well aware of the difficulties we've experienced in this country in Northern Ireland. To be honest, it has always been about minorities. The first Scottish settlers were a minority. Soon the Catholics would be a minority. There is now a minority appallingly treated in Northern Ireland, and these are world champions. And we are delighted to welcome tonight, on stage, one of those great world champions from Northern Ireland, Snooker world champion, Dennis Taylor. We also have another minority, a minority in North America, where they feel they too have been badly treated since Wolf stormed Quebec. In they cannot understand why we want them to speak English. It is, of course, the Canadians. The extraordinary and talented hockey player of a variety of which I am totally lacking in knowledge, and as you know, I lack knowledge in nothing. In fact, the only difference between me and the Pope is that, of course, he is infallible, whereas I am never wrong. Would you therefore welcome, ladies and gentlemen, the greatest ice hockey player ever, Wayne Gretzky. Gentlemen, welcome. Actually, are you like me, that when you look at Taylor, you think he's the ice hockey player and Gretzky's the snooker? Am I alone in that story? And therefore I'd like to talk to you, young man.
I have no teeth.
Just over there, there's a guy called Cliff Byrne who can make teeth that don't chatter in -50.
I'll tell you one thing before you start. That 14-year-old who shot 74, he's going to have no teeth by tomorrow.
That's interesting, because I understand that's how you dealt with 14-year-olds throughout your career. I just want to ask you a question here, because, like, lest we get carried away by this North American bonhomie, how many players are there in an ice hockey team?
20.
20? Okay. How did you get the number 99? That seems to be a bit confusing.
Do we really need to go through this?
We're going to be here all night.
Let's put it this way. At the end of the day, it worked out okay, right?
I don't get this retirement shit. Like, you know what they've done? Across the globe, ice hockey teams can't wear number 99 because of this guy. Now, listen, Irish people, can you imagine that when Jack Kyle retired as the Irish fly half in 1955, we retired the number 10 shirt in Ireland? In the name of God. Anyway,
What's a fly half?
fly half is the quarterback.
Well, just say quarterback.
Yeah, our quarterbacks in rugby can read, write, add, and subtract.
Poor Dennis is here. He's trying to get a snooker in.
Dennis Taylor is here.
The pundits can't.
There was 18 million and one, I have to tell you, awake at 2:30 in the morning when you spotted the black to win against Steelers. I want to ask you a question which I've wanted to ask all these years, right? You were 8-0 down in the first session. You were never ever in front until you knocked the black home, yeah? Is snooker like wrestling and Pakistani cricket, where we know the result in advance?
It's 26 years since I won that, and nobody's ever asked me a question, anything like that whatsoever. He's a clever man, this, isn't he? I was very, very lucky to come back against the great Steve Davis, a lot of our American friends, and it's great to see you all again. It's a couple of years since I've been here with my son Brendan. Great to see you all again. We had such a ball the last time, and I was very lucky. Snooker's not really played in the States. It's Commonwealth countries. It's very big in China. It's very big in Thailand. And I was very lucky to come back against the great Steve Davis. In the 80s, no one can beat him. And he led me 8-0, and I managed to pot the very last ball after 4 sessions that lasted 2 days, and it finished at 20 past midnight. And I was the lucky one that knocked the little black ball in to beat the great Steve Davis, and it's the one championship that everybody remembers. And I've got to put that all down to my Uncle Seamus, who taught me all I know about the game of snooker, because I moved over to England and lived with my Uncle Seamus, who was a great snooker player, could have been a top professional, could have been a top ice hockey player as well. He was just a naturally gifted sportsman, but he packed the game of snooker up, and he's a fishing fanatic. Used to spend all his time, George, fishing, and it didn't matter what the weather was like. And I remember years ago he went off fishing and it was -8 degrees, and he brought a flask of Jameson whiskey with him, and when he got there it was so bad he had to cut a hole in the ice. So he's fishing away with the whiskey beside him, and this voice said, "There are no fish in there." And he looked round and there's nobody there, so he had a swig of the whiskey. A voice again said, "There are no fish in there." And he looked round and he said, "Is that you, God?" And a voice said, "No, this is the ice rink manager." He was typically Irish, my uncle. He couldn't understand why he'd got one brother and his sister had two. I still haven't worked that out, George. And I must tell you this story because his backhand used to shake. His left on the table, left hand was perfectly still. A specialist told him, drink a pint of lager, it will stop the shake. Then he needed 2 pints of lager, 3 pints. This is perfectly true. Before he could even practice, a bit like the darts players, he needed 9 or 10 pints of lager. I'm playing him in the last 16 of the World Championship. We're halfway through the evening session, and Bill is a chance of beating the highest break. He's on an 80 break, 3 reds left, and I thought, how is this fella standing up? I have worked out, he's been up in the morning, he's had 9 or 10 pints before he practiced, he's had 6 or 7 frames of practice. He used to have a pint a frame. We played 9 frames in the afternoon session. We had 2-hour interval before the evening session. I've worked out he's had just over 30 pints of lager. And he's gone for the highest break. And he had to stretch across the snooker table, a little bit bigger than a pool table, all 320 pounds stretched across the table. He had to cock his leg up a little bit. And with all the lager that he drank, the inevitable happened.
Let me ask you, was his hand shaking?
It wasn't his hand that was shaking. This was the loudest noise that had ever echoed around the Crucible Theatre. And I don't want to burst out laughing. I can see the teeth marks in that finger there. All the crowd they're so close to the table, they're all biting their they don't want to burst out laughing. They've heard it on the other side of the arena, and Bill, who is bright red, before he played the shot, slipped back off the table and turned to the crowd next to him and said, "Who did that?" But there was a lovely follow-up way into that, because in snooker we don't have coloured or numbered balls. We have 15 red balls, a yellow, green, brown, blue, pink and black. Yeah. So a woman sent a letter and told me a lovely story. When that happened, her 12-year-old son was sitting in row 4 and their 2 neighbours in row 5, and when that happened they had to run out of the Crucible Theatre. The 12-year-old did a quick impersonation of Ted Lowe, the famous commentator, when that happened, and the 12-year-old's gone, "Oh dear, Big Bill's just potted a brown." Not bad.
Did they retire the ball?
I want to ask you something. You know the game that he became world champion at, snooker, but you wouldn't have played it. But you would have played similar type games in America on a table, yeah?
You played 8-ball.
8-ball.
Yeah.
Did you call it pocket billiards? Did you?
Yeah, pocket billiards.
That was a completely different connotation in Ireland to me. Yeah, well, schoolboys, because obviously we had Catholic priests at the top of the class, they would have given us 20 in the best. We used to sit at the back of the class, think of Marilyn Monroe, and play pocket billiards. So it has never sounded the same to me ever since. Listen, I want to ask both of you a question, because it's very interesting in relation to the leader here, 14. So many wonderful young men with their dads playing golf. You started at 6 playing ice hockey, and most of the kids are actually 9, 10, and 11. They were a lot older than you. You must have been an obnoxious son of a bitch to be confident enough to play with 10-year-olds.
I don't even know where we're going with that. You know, I'll tell you, the truth was, when I was 6, the only league you could play in was 10-year-olds. And so if I was going to play, I had to make a 10-year-old team, and I made the team. So I played there for 5 years. So that's the, you know, but I always tell kids, you play for love. I didn't play to win or compete. I love to play, and I always tell people, if you enjoy what you do, sports, business, golf, tennis, baseball, hockey, if you love it, you have a passion for it, and I had a passion for it. Same as what you do in your sport.
Yeah, it's interesting, of course, you call it ice hockey, we call it assault with a deadly weapon. Your man is 6. Now, apparently, obviously, I understand you're 6 and the uniforms are a bit too big. I understand that. But when you were 36, the uniforms were still too big. Why was that?
Because then I was married.
It's all that pocket bit.
Yeah, no. You know what? I always wore the biggest jersey, because when I was 6, the team everybody had the same jersey, and mine was so big it went down to here, so I would tuck it in. So I always tucked it in my pants. So when I turned pro, I wore the same size jersey, and I would tuck it in, and that was kind of my trademark. So that's why I always did that.
Dennis, this guy's 6, right? You were 9 when you went to a snooker table. How did that occur? Because isn't it true that proficiency at snooker is always deemed to have been the product of an ill-spent youth? So was your youth ill-spent, and if so, I'd love to hear it.
I should have started a bit earlier, shouldn't I? I don't know. They used to say that about snooker. You know, if you were good at golf or good at tennis, good at cricket, but snooker had this image back in the late 50s or late 40s, early 50s. Snooker rooms were all sort of above Burton shops, and they weren't the nicest places. You know, they're a bit dingy, and I think that's where the reputation came from. But the professional game always had a superb image. The great Joe Davis, the top players, used to play in theatres in London, private homes. They're always immaculately dressed. So I suppose to be good at any sport, I think you've got to misspend your youth just a little bit. And I was very lucky I mean, Wayne had 21 years as a professional, I had 30 years as a professional, travelled all over the world, and I was so lucky, because without that I wouldn't be sitting here with all the friends and playing golf with some of the greatest characters I've ever met. It's so great to be back here. I mean, the camaraderie around here is just unbelievable, and as I say, once again, to meet the great man here, it's just a thrill to be here, and I should have started just maybe a couple of years younger to misspend my youth.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dennis Taylor and Wayne Gretzky.